Light your torches, sharpen your pitchforks, and attack the comments section. It's time for us to rank the 10 Formula 1 teams from worst to best after pre-season testing. Any attempt to do this must be viewed with the understanding that it is a snapshot of the order as we saw it after 3 days in Bahrain. It's not an emphatic prediction for the season opening race or the final championship standings. We factored in raw speed, long run pace, trackside impressions and feedback from inside the teams, then read between the lines a little bit and then made some educated guesses to try to determine the differences between the testing leaderboard and reality. This ranking is therefore based on the evidence of the past few days. Things can change between now and the opening race as teams dig into their packages more and some even get their first big updates of the season ready. But enough caveats, let's get on with it. And once you're finished watching, let us know your ranking in the comments, just try to keep the sandbags out of it. Number 10, Williams. Williams looks to have a good, solid platform, but it's no surprise to see a car produced by a team that recently shed its technical director and head of aero being a little deficient in terms of downforce and therefore pace. The fact the car worked well even if it wasn't especially quick is reason for optimism. Doubly so given the need to create a car that's a little less condition sensitive in terms of the wind effect, with the new car appearing to be a decent starting point. Williams was also second in the laps completed charts, meaning if it has used its time well, it should at least be one of the best prepared teams heading into the first race weekend. Number 9, McLaren. McLaren is the least prepared team after testing, completing comfortably the least number of laps and with what appears to be one of the weaker cars in terms of both pace and on-track poise. Part of this was to be expected given McLaren's downbeat tone and the public acceptance that it has missed its aerodynamic efficiency targets. But there were other problems too. The car looks the least well balanced of the 10, Lando Norris admitted it feels similar to last year's knife edge machine, and there was a running battle to keep the inner front wheel fairings intact. There's a little bit of deja vu to 12 months ago, and everything points to a slow start to the season. Number 8, AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri's pace looked troubling until Yuki Tsunoda banged in a quick lap on the final evening using the grip of the C4 Pirellis. We have to be careful not to be swayed too much by what could have been a deceptive low fuel run, and we expect AlphaTauri to still be at risk of a Q1 elimination. But a better final day has maybe saved it from being at the back of the pack entirely. AlphaTauri appears to have made a step in tackling last year's lack of grip in the high-speed corners, but there's still a big question mark over its performance in the slow stuff. On the plus side, no team managed more laps, which should ensure it's able to make the most of what appears still to be a limited car at the start of the season. Number 7, Haas. The best way to justify Haas's position in this list is that despite being the 6th fastest team in testing, Haas just seemed profoundly 7th. That's not necessarily a bad thing, as it has all the signs of being a very dependable midfielder. Reliability looks good, the test was productive, the car doesn't have any obvious major weaknesses on track. It lacks the spark of last year that set up Kevin Magnussen's stunning start to the season, but there seems no reason this team can't aim for points. Number 6, Alfa Romeo. It would surprise us greatly if Alfa Romeo repeats being 3rd fastest next week, but we're not going to bump it down too many places. There were positive signs trackside, some key weaknesses from last year seem to have been improved, and the drivers seem very happy with the progress made after a big technical effort over the winter. That plus the lap time made the Alfa Romeo look the most convincing in the secondary midfield group that seems to comprise the Sauber run team, Haas and AlphaTauri. If any of those three look like clinging on to the front of the midfield, we would back Alfa Romeo. Number 5, Alpine. Why would we put the slowest team in testing bang in the middle of this ranking? Great question, and the answer is simple. Alpine is the most out of position team, and we are convinced it's holding quite a lot back. A very strict program tended to focus on longer runs on high fuel, and there's a confidence in Alpine that it has a good idea where it should be in the mix when it matters. That suggests to us it has ticked off the performance work it needed to do with the car while running a lower engine mode. This was a more impressive test than it looked on the surface, but not in a midfield destroying kind of way, more of a should be in the mix to be 4th or 5th fastest. Number 4, Mercedes. We could have flipped a coin to decide where to put Mercedes in this ranking, but the balance of 3 days in Bahrain suggests Mercedes is behind Aston Martin in terms of preparedness and long run pace. Mercedes started out on day 1 with genuine optimism, which turned to confusion on day 2 and then settled with the car in a better place on the final day. The porpoising and ride problems of last year are gone, and when Mercedes understood the balance better, the car looked less of a handful on track. But there still appear to be unanswered questions for the team. We would not be surprised if there is a significant upside in the car to unlock that will vault it back ahead of Aston Martin and into Ferrari territory. But were the Bahrain Grand Prix to have happened at the end of testing, Mercedes would have been a team looking over its shoulder at the leading midfielders rather than attacking the top two. Number 3, Aston Martin. We're not saying Aston Martin will beat Mercedes next week, but it nips in ahead for now. Aston Martin looks better prepared and had an extremely good long run on the final day that turned a lot of heads in the paddock. The team felt there was more to be unlocked from the car, but it feels like the AMR23 is a better understood package already than the W14. There's a small question mark in that Fernando Alonso didn't exactly nail what would have been his fastest soft tyre lap, so we are judging its potential on the hypothetical jump it should make when everything comes together. If that doesn't happen, then it will fall behind Mercedes and maybe Alpine too. Number 2, Ferrari. Ferrari doesn't look like it has the measure of Red Bull despite some latent optimism within the team, but nor does it look super vulnerable to Mercedes or even Aston Martin. Closer over one lap than long run pace, especially going into the final day, Ferrari didn't deny it had some less impressive runs through the test. But it was exploring a wide range of setup options, it completed a lot of performance running when the track was at its hottest, and we know it was holding something in reserve. By the end of the week, Ferrari was confident it had had a good test, and it is starting the season set to be Red Bull's biggest threat. But how close can it get when everyone is on track at the same time, in the same conditions, and pushing for the same goal? Number 1, Red Bull. If you followed our testing coverage, you will not be surprised by this position in the list. Red Bull produced as dominant a performance as it's possible to in testing. The Red Bull RB19 looked comfortably the best car on track, the team is upbeat, and it has a clear pace advantage over one lap and over long runs. If it has any vulnerabilities, Red Bull kept them well hidden. Max Verstappen talked of driving a car that does perform a little differently, even though it is an aggressive evolution of the dominant 2022 Red Bull. With decent mileage clocked up, Red Bull had plenty of opportunity to try the full range of setup experiments and build its understanding. It's going into the opening weekend in great shape and undeniably as the favourite. That's our ranking. What's yours? Let us know in the comments, and if you want to know more about the fight at the front this season, why not check out this video on the key design differences between the Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes, and how the Aston Martin approach could upset the established order.